Hey, what's going on, Archons? Welcome to another episode on my YouTube channel. And this week I wanted to go into a topic that I just started thinking about. And I was like, well, let's start thinking about this in a video format. So as you can see, I have the new Master Vault pulled up here, which is very colorful. And on the note of colorful, I've kind of decided, as you may have noticed in some of my videos more recently, that I'm no longer going to have the intro music and that card showing my logo, and I've decided to just straight upload the videos into YouTube. I was noticing that there was a degradation of quality when I was exporting it out of the software with all the other things in it and then uploading it to YouTube, as opposed to just straight uploading it to YouTube. And I feel like the quality of the video surpassed the music, but maybe I'll figure a way to get that in another way. But for now, let's just go into this. So here's the new Master Vault. I have not logged in yet myself, but I want to have this as the launch site for everything before I go into today's topic, which is the rotation of houses since the inception of the game and kind of where we are. So of course I'm using the fantastic resource of Arcana, and we're just going to kind of go through what we had. So we had Brobnar, Dis, Logos, Mars, Sanctum, Shadows, and Untamed as the start of pretty much KeyForge, and that continued in Age of Ascension. And then what happened was, we can see this all here, in Age of Ascension. And then, so as we can see, there is no difference between these two. And then Worlds Collide got introduced, which saw the removal of Mars and then the removal of Sanctum, with then introducing two new houses for the first time, the Saurian Republic and the Grand Star Alliance right here. And then from there, that was pretty much the most, I think, exciting moment in KeyForge to a degree, because it was something new when we had just been playing with the same thing for two sets. And with that also, afterwards that happened, we saw the obvious introduction of mass mutations, and with that the reintroduction of Sanctum and the removal of Brobnar, to everyone's joyous applause due to their not great nature in Worlds Collide. In fact, bringing down almost the whole set as a whole with their inclusion, which was quite interesting, because I don't think that was really felt in the first two sets by any house, but it was very much felt in this Worlds Collide set. So then Mass Mutations brought back Sanctum, which was interesting because Sanctum in that set, I thought, it was not bad, but it was not good. It didn't wow you, but it didn't disappoint either. So that was kind of an interesting aspect. And then of course from there we went into Dark Tidings, which then saw us rotate out Dis and introduce the fish of Unfathomable. And with that we also saw Sanctum was still there, and Sanctum was again, I think it kept the same sort of status quo, as in you weren't wowed and you weren't disappointed. It just was what it was. Arguably it was maybe a little bit better in that set as the previous, but in Call of the Archons it's very vanilla. In AOA it definitely had a bit of an uptake with some interesting aspects to it, and then it was gone, and then it came back, and of course we saw some interesting things, but nothing truly awe-inspiring, we'll say, as we've seen with some other houses. Now, I will get into the Winds of Exchange part of everything in a moment, but I'm going to circle back now. So we obviously had the Dis being a powerhouse in Call of the Archons, same with Shadows, and in its inception, I think Shadows in Call of the Archons is actually not the same with the way the game is played, and I've spoken on this before. We had Mars, which was, I think, actually really good in Call of the Archons. It just didn't always come together in a good way, but it had the components for possibility. And then Age of Ascension Mars kind of was a hit or miss. It had some really the same sort of thing, but I think it lessened. It just had some key things in it that made it like truly, like, you know, it is kind of set an archetype. Like we can't not mention the Genka aspect. So Martian generosity being introduced just really made Mars so sought after just for that aspect. And then obviously we have had logos, which has been a perennial house until the most recent one. And that has been, I think, maybe the most consistent house in terms of what it brought and what it provided. It definitely had a dip in Dark Tidings, but was not disappointing. And then obviously we had also Dis here, which has been now going to be gone for 2 sets. And that one was amazing. Call of the Archons. It was not terrible in Age of Ascension. Worlds Collide, it got an uptick. And then Mass Mutations, I think it became quite a powerhouse again. And then we're going to move on to the Shadows aspect. Shadows, I think, is one of the most interesting houses actually over time, because in Call of the Archons in set, it was exceptionally strong and just kind of mind-blowing with the things it could do. And that kind of continued in Age of Ascension, but got pulled back just a little bit. Worlds Collide, it definitely took a dip. Mass Mutations, it took a dive off a cliff for the most part. And then Dark Tidings, for myself personally, I felt it rose back up, but not one of the top houses. But I love some Dark Tidings Shadows. I think it provides really interesting board states and some really cool things you can do. So I'm never disappointed for Shadows in Dark Tidings. And then we have Untamed, also the one that has been perennial up until, same with Shadows, until the most recent set about to release, Winds of Exchange. And it was bonkers in Call of the Archons. Not as much in Age of Ascension. It lost its Ember Control components, which were kind of a boon in Call of the Archons. And then it continued to not be that exciting in Worlds Collide, although it did have some fun chase cards. Mass Mutations, it rose up again. I think they found a nice balance of things with that. And then Dark Tidings, I think it also came back as a Call of the Archons 2.0, you might say, but not quite as strong, but a little bit more balance with that burst quality. So I really enjoyed the evolution of Untamed, except in Worlds Collide. Age of Ascension, it still had its place. It just ended up being a component that contributed to a low Ember control deck, which became unfortunate, but it still had some really great aspects to it. Now let's move on to, I didn't even talk about Brobnar. Now Brobnar, Call of the Archons, I'm personally a really big fan of Call of the Archons Brobnar. Even more recently, as the meta has shifted and these board-based states have existed, I've been really enjoying that. Same with Age of Ascension. I think there's some great things within Brobnar, and I have some really fun decks that I love to play there. And then we all know the curse of Worlds Collide Brobnar, which I don't know. There's part of me that wants to find the perfect Brobnar house in the Worlds Collide set, but it's a lot. But they do exist. They're not every single one is bad, but it's definitely not rated high. So you can kind of find some gems, I think, in that regard. From there, let's move on to the, where is it? Saurians. So Saurian got introduced in Worlds Collide and was obviously a blockbuster hit right off the gates. Everything about it, flavor, card power, was just amazing. Then we saw Mass Mutation. It definitely got pulled back. Was not quite as strong. And then Dark Tidings really pulled back, I think. I have not myself played it in Winds of Exchange, so I'm not going to speak too much on Winds of Exchange, to be honest, because of the lack of general experience with the set for myself and in play. And so we've seen Saurian kind of start really high and just keep dropping down since then, unfortunately, because they were amazing right out the gates. And then Grand Star Alliance, which is probably my favorite house. We saw, again, Worlds Collide. They came out in the most exciting way. Like, that is my ultimate favorite way to play Star Alliance, is there. The Mass Mutations definitely got a drop off, but had some exciting things into it. Then I think actually Dark Tidings, it rose back up, and the way the tide and things worked in the card pool really kind of went back into the Worlds Collide Star Alliance, but provided almost it's less OP. It had more of a balance to it, so that it felt more fair, because you can just get hosed with some Worlds Collide Star Alliance. And then of course in Dark Tidings we had the introduction of Unfathomable, which a little bit underwhelming in their opening set, and I don't know if that was a byproduct of the introduction of Saurian and Star Alliance being so powerful right out the gates that they were concerned about creating a similar instance, because they did get a power boost in Winds of Exchange. That much I can speak on. And yeah, so they're still a house that we got to see how they evolve over time. And then, of course, we now have the introduction of Equidons, which is the new house of Winds of Exchange. Now, here's my call. We also saw Brobnar come back, Mars come back, and those both came back in quite a robust fashion. Sanctum in this set has kind of, apparently, from what I've been seeing and hearing, and from my own play with Sanctum, it's in one of my decks, is still staying in that sort of vanilla game state where it's not a powerhouse, but I think in Equidon, in Winds of Exchange, it is a little bit more disappointing. But in the previous, it's never really been the bottom per se, or even at the top. It's kind of, well, I mean, maybe in Call of the Archons it's the bottom, but it's always kind of had this vanilla quality that hasn't been that exciting. So here's my prediction for the next set. I think Sanctum is going to come out in the next set as a powerhouse, just due to the fact that it has not had its chance to shine yet, and it's due for that. So that's my hot take right now. Now, in terms of houses rotating out, I think the natural progression is going to see the next newest introduced houses go out. And that means Saurian or Star Alliance, or maybe even both, go out. My inclination is that we're going to see actually Saurians leave next. That is going to be my call. And not Star Alliance. And here's the reason why, is I think the interaction of Mars and Star Alliance is something we've all wanted to see since Star Alliance came and Mars left. And so having only one set of that interaction, I don't think provides enough to allow that to kind of, that relationship to blossom and be something exciting. I really want some Mars Star Alliance decks. I think those are just going to be a lot of fun. I have one right now. So I'm hoping that that prediction will stay true. And I think we're seeing a new house come back. So, I mean, we could see them both rotate out. We could see even, I mean, we did have three, something go for three. Had some go for two and then go out. So it's possible the fish go out because they came out so strong in this next set that maybe they take a bow back. We could maybe even see Sanctum rotate out again because they only left for one set. So that may be another natural removal. Because if you look, they are the least removed actually overall. So maybe we'll see Sanctum even go out, get retooled, and then come back the set after. So it could be we see the loss of Sanctum and maybe the loss of Saurian, which in and itself is quite interesting because those are two very big-bodied houses that could leave. So that's going to be my call. Is I'm actually going to go with, I think Sanctum and Saurian are going to be out next, and we'll see what happens. So that's going to do it for this episode. I would love to know your thoughts. What do you think is going to rotate out next? And do you think that we could maybe even just keep everything the same for a whole another cycle? I mean, that's also a possibility. But I think we got a new house come in, so that's probably unlikely. But I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe just see a one house rotation even, just simply because of the fact that we did have three leave in this most recent set, Winds of Exchange. So let me know your thoughts, what you think will rotate out, and maybe even why. And please leave in the comments below. Please like and subscribe if you have not already done so. And as always, folks, may your ember never be stolen and your keys forged promptly. Have a good one.